Welcome back to that Rugby Podcast. We are the Sports Move. It is Luke and Husey here on the Monday after the Rugby Union World Cup Final. Devastation. I'm glad we're both wearing black.
Yeah,
As in
for
a
morning,
funeral.
you know?
Yep.
Yeah.
Because that's what it feels like right about now.
Oof.
A South African
Yeah.
victory, and we all have to sit here and just accept it, I guess.
Yeah, it was definitely one of the more controversial World Cup finals, I think you could say. On the one side, there is the absolute battle that South Africa went through in all three of their games, winning by a single point. So you got to hand them respect for that, for hanging tough in those situations. On the other hand, New Zealand played with their hand tied behind their back for most of the game. I think there was maybe a total of 10 minutes of game time where they had a full 15-man complement between the first yellow card and then Sam Cane's red card. And there's probably about 20 minutes of game time total where they had even numbers due to the South African yellow card. So to do that and to only lose by a point to South Africa, defending world champs, is a huge effort on the All Blacks part. But man, oh man. And I say this as a neutral party, neither New Zealand or South Africa. I don't, and this is obviously going to be the main talking point. I don't understand how one is a red card and one is not. I get they put out the reasons, the mitigations for Sia Khaleesi's one, but I don't think there was enough of a difference between that and Sam Cane's for Sam Cane to have gotten a red card. Or if he did, then Khaleesi should have got one as well, because to me there wasn't enough difference in those actions to delineate that one is a red card and one is a yellow in a World Cup final. Like even in any other match, I feel like there's not enough there. And just in general, I felt like the Sam Cane one was pretty soft anyway, you know?
Yeah, as a biased All Black supporter, I'm going to surprise you here, and I'm actually going to disagree with you. And I'm going to say I think every card was the right decision. And I say this only because I'm glad they made the decisions they made in a Rugby World Cup final. Because I think if you go with the Sam Cane to be just a yellow card, you are like that. I think met the red card threshold. Now, I actually don't put a lot of blame on Sam Cane in that position. And again, I will say this: the reason I don't do that, I think Jesse Krill, yes, has changed directions, but he hasn't dipped in his height. If you actually watched that back, and I've watched that moment back a couple of times now, Sam Cane, when he comes in to make that tackle, is never expecting to make a tackle. He isn't. As he come in there, he's doing what a good 7 does and just taking space. And he just didn't have the reaction time to dip at all, is the way I saw it. I don't think he even went in there planning to make a tackle on Jesse Krill. Jesse Krill just stepped across, and as a good 7, you put your body in the way and make a tackle. And the way I keep saying this, that players are going to learn, for the past 20 years, that's been a great tackle from a number 7, putting pressure on, making that tackle, being in the right position. Sam Cane, other than the past 2-3 years, most of his life, that's a good tackle. You know what I mean? I know it's up high and it does make head contact and everything, but if pre us changing the laws and the head contact and everything like that, that I don't think gets called as a high tackle. So again, I see that. Sia Khaleesi's, you can see the clear dip. I'm one to always go head-on-head contact is just part of the game, especially when you're tackling like that. So I see it. The one I actually find more controversial is the Shannon Frizzell one, purely because, again, there's no doubt it shouldn't have been a red card. He never intended to hit the legs. I know it's weird as well, and this is something I guess we're going to have to push and talk about probably further, but in New Zealand, like, a roll challenge like that in a ruck is completely fine. Like, you can go in there and, as they call it here, a crocodile roll, as long as it's around the neck, it's fine. I know in the Northern Hemisphere it's a big no-no. Like, even trying to roll in any tackle is a no-no. And the reason is what happens is you end up landing on players' knees like that. But, again, we're getting to this point where coming into a breakdown, I don't know, there's not a lot of things you can do to remove players anymore. Because if you dip and you don't get that right, you make head contact, there's just a lot. And, again, all we keep asking for is consistency. And I think those decisions were consistent on what you would call an irregular game, and I'm glad they made those decisions in a Rugby World Cup final. It sucks. It obviously sucks. And a lot of people had said it pre-World Cup that, hey, this World Cup's going to get decided by a red card. I don't think the final ended up being decided by the red card, but that's I guess, credit to the All Blacks team for hanging in there and making I guess, a competition of it. But I actually, and I'm probably in the minority of New Zealand fans here, thought Wayne Barnes had a pretty decent game. And
well, I actually think Wayne Barnes had a good game. I think the TMO probably got involved a little bit too much. That for me, for watching the game, even if it wasn't World Cup final, it was a regular test match. I don't want to be hearing the TMO that much. I don't want to be going back that far for some of the things they went back for. It's like the past is the past now. All right. It's like it's so far back because again, it's consistency, right?
Yeah.
If I go back to the Australia versus Argentina game in the Rugby Championship, if we're going back that far for the New Zealand non-try, where they went back and looked at the line out and they saw the knock on there, why didn't they go back all that way in the Argentina versus Australia game where there was a knock on prior to scoring the try and nowhere near as many phases as what it was in this game? So
do we know how many? Because I thought there was a rule. I thought it was 2 phases, but I'm assuming there isn't that rule anymore.
I'm not sure. But for me, I agree with you. Consistency. I actually thought Wayne Barnes, I agree, Wayne Barnes had a really good game. I liked his calls. I liked how he actually spoke to players, got involved, didn't let anything get too out of hand, let the game play a bit. But I didn't want to hear the TMO chirping in that much, you know? Like they brought in cards that I think if the referee isn't seeing that it's a card, I don't know if it's that obvious that it should then become a card later, you know? Like for me, the TMO should be there for the referee to reference. The TMO shouldn't be actively contacting the referee saying, hey, we've seen something back here. That for me, I think that is bad for rugby. Yeah. I don't like that at all. I think the TMO should be there, like in American football, where a referee can say, hey, can you check this? Because I don't know what happened here, or I think something happened here. I need clarification. I don't like that the TMO can just jump into the referee's ear and break the flow of the game. I don't think that's right. You know, and
I think, sure, I agree.
I'm sure that means that people will get away with some stuff, but I think that's better for the flow of the game and for the game as a whole.
Yeah, I agree, and I think the only time they should step in is complete and utter foul play, like when there is something like a punch or something like that. And I guess as we sit here and talk about all this stuff as well, I think World Rugby probably will look into this as well. Like Adi Savia penalty was obviously one that Wayne Barnes missed, and he admitted he missed it, and I think that takes great courage from a referee on the field to say to a player when you're mic'd up and you know that's going to be heard by everyone that, hey, I missed that call, that wasn't correct. But the TMO can't change that call now, but why can he go back and check that knock on? Like, again,
exactly.
I get it.
You should be able to reverse calls, you know?
If we're going to say one thing, let's do it all. Again, consistency is all we're asking for, but let's digress off the referee chat and everything like that. In the end, look, Wayne Barnes, I thought, is the right man for the job in a Rugby World Cup final, and I think shall continue to do so. I think they'll look into everything that happened in that game, and that's a good thing, I think, for rugby. And as again, we just want consistency, and as we start to adapt to these more consistent rules and plays, I think rugby will become better for it. I just think they made a lot of brave decisions on the day that I'm glad they made, as much as it hurts to look back now. I'm glad they made. I also just want to mention as well, it's really interesting, but I hope rugby doesn't go this way as we've seen with soccer or football, where players going down can cause a check. Now, Jesse Creel didn't come off for an HIA, but he was down after the Sam Cane tackle and then ended up being a red card. Now, there are clips of Eben Etzebeth leading with a forearm into a contact with Sam Cane. If Sam Cane stays down there, that probably gets reviewed, and then there's probably something from there. And I'm not saying, again, that Jesse Creel took a dive, because you take a contact to the head, you've got a right to sit down. And even if Sam Cane's wasn't the most forceful one you've ever seen, you've still taken contact to the head. So I'm not going to sit here and blame them for going down. But I just don't want to see, hey, I felt something got hit, I'm going to stay down now. Like Sam Cane kept playing with Eben Etzebeth to the head. And there was one, I can't remember who it was. I think, it was Argentina, Wales. And you can see a clean out in the quarterfinal, ended up making contact with the head, and the player's taken a pretty clear dive afterwards. And in the end, it wasn't a card, and I was so thankful for that. And I just want to make sure we don't have players rolling around on the floor.
It's coming into NRL. It's coming into NRL a lot. Like after contact, instead of getting up and playing the ball, they sit there and they go, and look at the referee, like check that, and then the referee will stop the game. They'll check it, and then someone will get sin binned or reported or something like that. And yeah, I 100% agree. 100% agree. There's no place for that in rugby. That trying to game the system and exploit it for really not what it's intended for. That's not. It shouldn't be in rugby.
Yeah, totally agree. But let's move on to the actual game. All Blacks still had a chance to win it.
The fact that it came down to a missed kick is pretty incredible.
Exactly.
You know, and two missed kicks really, because he had the long range. There was the long range penalty and there was the conversion, and both were close as well. Like the fact that it came down to that, for me, I would be so. I can't even imagine how you feel. I would feel so frustrated the fact that you fought so hard and it came down to that, and that you could have won. It wasn't like, I think it would be one thing if the red card happened and then you were torpedoed from there and you were like, well, we got smashed. The red card meant we were never really in it. But with this, it's like we were legitimately in this game. There was opportunities and it just came down to kicking, and we didn't execute that. And and then even controversially, the Artie Savia one as well. They got an extra kick that they then got points from. It's just it just shows you all the different things that come in that could factor into a win. And no matter when you've got two quality teams like New Zealand and South Africa, no matter what circumstances you find them, you can never count them out.
Yeah, and I think that was big for me. Like, I look back and I go, we were the better team, and this doesn't often happen in rugby where the better team loses. Like, you can, again, referencing football or soccer, a better team can go out there and another team can park the bus and lose 1-0. No team, even the South Africans, I wouldn't say parked the bus. They played their style, which is we actually, I think, managed it very well. And funnily enough, I shanked a nice wee goal kick, not this weekend because we had the weekend off, but the weekend before, I might put the clip up as I'm saying this, shanked a goal kick from about 15 metres straight out in front type thing. Like, it was terrible, miserable, disgusting.
Yeah.
And I'm not a renowned goal kicker in my time, but I was put up because I do play 10. And the coach, as we were talking at training on Tuesday, he goes, a good goal kicker will never lose you a game. Goal kicking doesn't lose you a game, but a good one can definitely win you a game. And I don't think something rung more true. And it's not saying Wonga or Barrett are bad kickers, of course not. Like, they've been good throughout the tournament. But two missed kicks, if we make those kicks, we win the game. And
if you make one of those kicks,
exactly.
even if you make one of those kicks, or if South Africa miss a kick, it's just
exactly.
Game of inches.
So that is and that's what I guess I can at least I can take away from. There were so many moments in that game where I think we just got unlucky, and there was the chip kick over the top for Artie Savia, the bounce of the ball. It was one of those games where you look back and you go, there was so many opportunities, so many moments. South Africa, to their credit, took every one of their chances. Like, they didn't create a lot of chances, but when they got their chances, they turned them into points, and they defended like crazy. And man of the match, Peter Seftertoy, deservedly so. 28 tackles against the All Blacks in a Rugby World Cup final is just something special. So, look, I sat there and I went, there were some bold calls Ian Foster made with substitutions, bringing Finlay Christie on, like Aaron Smith quite clearly being our best halfback, taking off Will Jordan, and they were all the right calls. All the right calls, I think, in my mind. Actually, the only one I would have probably changed is I would have loved to see D-Mac on probably about 5 minutes earlier.
I think it was a bit too late because you got to get into the game. You got to get into the feel of it.
And you could tell when he was on, there was a spark change where it was like, okay, we're running the ball now. And that's probably it. But again, Ian Foster, from where we were a year ago to where we are now, like in a Rugby World Cup final, losing by a point to the South Africans, I go, just credit where credit is due. Just Ian Foster's done a great job. Even the South Africans, there was, you look back to Mount Smart where we ran rings around them for a bit. They've turned up. They only beat Wales 2-1 a series ago. Like, it wasn't like this build up to the South African team. You expected them to go in and beat France by a point, then beat England by a point, and then back it up and win in the World Cup final by a point. So yeah, I think standouts for them was obviously Detroit, and then Cheslin Kobe's just, he's something else, isn't he? He's a rugby union player you've ever seen one. Like his ability around the park, just his versatility. Thought he was fantastic. Actually, I give credit to Itzebeth. I thought he had a good game. They fixed their line-out issues and actually caused us line-out issues from a week ago. So, again, on top there. For the All Blacks, Mark Talia, 9 defenders beat, and just
a really good game.
A freak of nature when it comes to breaking tackles. I think I give a lot of credit, actually, to the whole forward pack there. You're down a flanker for most of the game. Geordie Barrett's your number 6, who... I can't imagine has done a lot of scrummaging in his time.
No.
At least he's a big lad. It would be up to close to 100 kicks.
He would have just asked his brother, like, what do I do, you know?
How do I get my head in here?
Scott, help me.
Yeah, and I think that full-pack to hold the scrum, to not give away any scrum penalties, and to right at the end there, that last scrum, if it stays in, South Africa do a great job getting it out. If it stays in there much longer, I think we win a penalty there. And obviously penalty to win the Rugby World Cup there, goal kick at the end you take. But yeah, it sucks. It's going to suck. It's going to hurt for the next 4 years, you know, because we're right there in the moment, so close, but yet so far away. And now I have to listen to Saffers. We have to listen to Saffers for the next 4 years. Parade another World Cup, 8 years in total. That hurts.
It does. It is not fun.
Yeah.
Not fun. Oh, well.
That is the Rugby World Cup done and dusted.
Yeah.
Obviously, now we move into, and this is the 4-year cycle, which is now to the Australian World Cup as we move on pretty quickly. A lot of players departing from New Zealand, from South Africa especially. Not a lot from Australia's World Cup squad, surprisingly so. But someone who is departing, head coach Eddie Jones. It's finally happened. Mate, thoughts, feelings.
It's still so strange because it still feels like a smokescreen because there's just so many language, like he's set to depart or he's reportedly made his intention clear to leave Rugby Australia, and it's like it's really frustrating because for the last 2 months basically we've wanted to just hear a clear answer from Eddie one way or the other, and it just hasn't come out with it. So it's very frustrating from a fan's perspective that we're getting all these reportedly so or led to believe X, Y, and Z. Look, if he is going, you know, it's going to be probably one of the darkest points in Rugby Australia history. The fact that, you know, Dave Rennie's 4-year plan was blown up, right? You know, I'm not saying that Australia would have won the World Cup with Dave Rennie at the helm, but I don't think it's too far-fetched to say that we probably would have done better than this World Cup. You know, you could see there and recent weeks have, I think, really soured Eddie Jones's reputation here with comments he's made about leadership in past Wallabies teams. And he sit there and he said, that's Michael Hooper, one of the immortals of the game, one of the great leaders of Australian rugby, who has suffered and at times put the entire Wallabies on his back when no one else has shown up. He's always shown up 110%. And to call him a poor leader, or to call even Quade Cooper a poor leader. Now, Quade's has not been a perfect person, but last year I think he showed exceptional leadership in Australians' international campaigns there. There's a great clip that someone posted of him talking to the team right before a comeback win for the Wallabies. And so I think that's really disrespectful for someone that hasn't been here, right? For someone that wasn't here to make comments on the leadership of the players. I think that's wrong. I think when you're a coach, you never attack your own players. Never. Even if you've dropped them from the squad. Eddie Jones, as head coach of the Wallabies, has had stewardship of all Australian rugby players. To attack any one of them is, I think, a disgrace. I think it's a failure of leadership, it's a failure of coaching, and it's a failure of just general human decency. If you criticize upwards, I think when you're a coach, he has his critiques of Rugby Australia, and I think some of them are valid, right? It's a shit show at the moment. There's disagreements, but you know you've got to work. You've got to work through it, and you know I don't think, all the issues that he had with Rugby Australia, I don't think he's helped them. I don't think he's, if he's seen these issues, I think he's come in and complained. I don't think he's come in and looked to help them at all. I think he was a great marketing item. When he first came in, he was a great news headline. He was great for getting some more support behind rugby, but he wasn't a good coach and he wasn't a good administrator, which you have to be as the Wallabies head coach. As the head coach of a national team, you have to have a little bit of that as well. So, I mean, if you look back with 2020 vision and you sort of think, well, what could we have done differently? Right? I don't think you bring Eddie in as the head coach. I think you bring him in as coaching director or something else like that. I think a lot of people just say, if we knew what we knew now, we just wouldn't have brought him in at all and just continued on with Rennie. I don't think that's a fair assessment to make, because you have to look at the circumstances at the time and put yourself in those shoes, right? This is the Eddie Jones that made it to a World Cup final in the previous World Cup. 73% winning record with England, always seemed to smack Australia around, knew what our weaknesses were, was a successful head coach, had been successful with multiple countries, including Australia, South Africa, Japan, England, right? So you see that all on paper, and you think, well, this guy, he's expressed a desire to come back to Australia. We should get him involved somehow. I think anyone that says, oh, I wouldn't have brought him on at all, is bullshitting, and you're lying to yourself and to everyone else. But I think the way that they treated Rennie was not right. Even if Rennie wasn't the best head coach Australia's ever had, even if he was one of the worst, you still, I think, allow him to play out his contract, and you bring Eddie in an advising role, right? Or you bring him in a coaching director role, to completely unbalance the ship the way that it did less than 12 months out. And we even said, like, that's a bold move, a very, very bold and risky move. England did it, but they did it, and they put in place the deputy of Eddie Jones. So he was the similar system, similar structures. He was familiar with the players and stuff. Eddie's coming in from a long stint overseas. He's not familiar with his players. He's not familiar with working with them at a coaching level. He's used to coaching against them, but not coaching them. So yeah, for me, it was a gamble. They rolled the dice, and it failed, but it failed because of Eddie Jones, his attitude at times, and the way he treated the players, which I think is really wrong. If he'd come in, had a genuine crack, and just didn't chuck a grenade in, or essentially what he did was he threw a bunch of shit at the wall and saw what stuck, right? Or tried to see what stuck. Yep. He threw out his toys. He whinged a lot, and now at the end here, he's attacked Rugby Australia and the players on his way out. So he's fired a parting shot on his way out the door. And I think this has probably ruined his legacy. It's probably ruined his coaching legacy. Unless he pulls off a miracle with Japan or wherever he goes next, I think he's probably going to be an infamous character in world rugby history. And probably rightfully so. With, as I said, attacking the players, that for me is an unforgivable sin. Unforgivable.
It's just, it's so interesting. Like, I just don't understand the perspective that he's got here. Like, trying to get inside his head now. Like, you've selected a young squad, you've left out these players, but yet you chose them for the rugby championship and then said about their leadership. Like, the Michael Hooper one gets me, because Michael Hooper, so selfless. Like, we saw the first time he put himself over the team was actually to benefit the team when he was having mental health issues. And for you to go to a player like that, it's one of those things where everyone who works with Eddie Jones seems to love working with him. Like, the English players, you never heard anything bad. Even these Aussie ones currently, never heard anything bad. It's the same thing with Michael Hooper. The fact that I've never ever heard someone make the statement that Eddie Jones has made just leaves me going like, what's going on? And then for him to select such a young team to go to a Rugby World Cup, to get knocked out in the pool stages, I just go, what has happened the past year? Like, what was he like? You've got 33 players to select, and the squad he selected, I'm still in. Yeah, look, he's done no help for himself. I agree with you there. I think his legacy, especially in Australian rugby, is now in tatters. Like, again, everyone's going to be like, Eddie Jones, very good coach, rah, all over the world. But in Australian rugby, what he's done, unless the next person can turn it around and you can say Carter Gordon goes on to become the greatest ever first fly half in the game, and you go, that was probably because Eddie gave him a shot, rah. But even that, someone's going to have to turn Carter Gordon into the greatest fly half in the world. And
Yeah.
look, what you had, as you've said, you had the answers under Rennie. It went Rennie, then McKellar. And now you haven't got McKellar because he signed for 2 years. Like, where do you turn to next? No New Zealand coach is going to want to come over there. I can't see many
there was some news today about there's a pathway for McKellar to coach Australia. There's McKellar. There's Stephen Larkham, who I think would be a really good fit because he's one of the great attacking minds that rugby's ever had, and that's really where Australia has suffered is we self-inflicted wounds in attack, right? And especially in this World Cup, we didn't look threatening at all with ball in hand. So I wouldn't mind Stephen Larkham in there. Other than those two, though, Dan McKellar and Stephen Larkham, I don't know where you look. I really don't know where you look.
Because I don't think a New Zealander would take, like, it would have to be an inexperienced New Zealander looking to get his shot. It's not going to take, you're not pulling one of the Super Rugby coaches now. It's just not, it's not happening. I know Leon McDonald signed to the All Blacks, but say Leon McDonald was available, I don't see him being like, why would I do that? I saw what you did to Dave Rennie for 4 years. You just tore him apart and then said, see you later. Big thing I am pretty happy with for Australian rugby, I think this needed to end the circus, this Eddie Jones circus. And the fact that he resigns, I assume he's not getting that big of a payout for his 5 years. So that's where Aussie rugby were stuck in a rock and a hard place. And I do give credit to Eddie Jones if he was like, look, I've actually fucked this up and I can't save this situation. Let me just resign. You don't have to pay me out. Aussie Rugby, to their credit, I think have handled it well by coming out and just saying we support him. Now it looks bad on Eddie Jones and it doesn't look so bad on Aussie Rugby. But where to now? You're meant to. This is your chance. You've got a British and Irish Lions test in 2 years. You've got the World Cup at home in 4 years. This decision is now so key. And so I imagine they take a lot of time to make this decision. They need to get the right person on board who's going to jump in and around the centralised contracts, who's going to have the faith of all the Super Rugby teams. So it's a big appointment, and
I think you've got to get someone who's been in the Brumby system or in the Queensland Red system, because those are the two that are really holding out for centralisation. So you need someone who's got those relationships with those parties to get them on board, which is again why I look at McKellar and Larkham. Within the Queensland Red system, I don't really have an answer for who it could be.
It wouldn't surprise me if they, not as head coach, and don't get me wrong, this is not, although I think it might do the world of good. Brad Ford, currently taking some time off, just even get him in there as a forwards coach, he'd be great for the culture of Australian rugby. You don't put him in a position where he's the head coach and has to, he's made some tough decisions. All he is about is how hard players work, all of that. So I would put him in there in this, and again, he's got that relationship to the Reds. The Reds loved him when they were there, like the front office at least, or the back office, whatever you want to call it. Some of the players may not have, James O'Connor and so. But yeah, it's an interesting time with some big decisions to be made. And I'm the same as you. I don't know where they turn. It's tough. It's really tough. Shall we move on though for that Rugby World Cup in 2027? We have a new format. How are you feeling about that, my friend?
Good. I think it's time to get some more of these lower tier nation involved. We see it all the time in rugby league, all sports. The more you get the lower tier teams involved playing the upper tier teams, the more they grow, right? So we seen it with Argentina over the years, improved. We seen it with Japan, improved, right? Italy, improved. Georgia, improved. Portugal, throughout the course of this World Cup, improved. I think it's great. You're going to get, as well, countries like USA involved with the huge market there, right? I think it was probably very detrimental for this World Cup to not have USA involved because of those viewership numbers, right? I think and then you have the nations now, they will have more success at the World Cup because there will be lower tier teams involved. They're more likely to have wins. I like that it's an extended finals with a round of 16, quarterfinal, semifinal, final, much like the Soccer World Cup. So I'm a fan overall of the changes. I think it is, and I think we avoid what we had this World Cup, where you have, a France and New Zealand, South Africa, Ireland in the same pool, and Scotland in the same pool, and then Scotland misses out kind of thing. Now it comes down to those sudden death matches in the finals time. It feels like the pool stage, the teams that should qualify should get through the pool stage, right? In the finals time, that is where the quality matches, the real super quality matches happen. And that's the same with the Soccer World Cup, and that's the most successful sporting event in the world, right? It's the most successful sporting tournament anyway. So I quite like the changes.
The only thing I dislike about a 24-team pool is the fact that only a handful of the third place teams get in. So you could finish on the same points total as someone else, but not get in because of points difference. And I'm not a big fan of that purely because, you know, you could end up in a pool, let's just say, for an example, of a New Zealand, Australia, just pulling from this World Cup, you know, and then like a, I don't know, your Portugal. Let's put Portugal in there. Could be third and have to play two tougher teams versus someone else finishing third in it. Like, you know, it still leaves a little bit of a grey area to me. And this is the only way you can do it. I get it. And we couldn't quite move to...
there's never going to be a perfect tournament format, I think. I think there's never going to be
until we get enough teams to quality level where we can make it, 6 pools, like the way the Football World Cup is. And so it's all just the top 2 teams and it's...
Yeah, I think that's a 32 team
32 team, yeah, right? 32 team, and we're not close to that yet. We don't have enough for 32 teams, but I think we will. That'll be the eventual thing. You'll have 32 teams, 4 pools of 6, top 2, whatever it is.
4 pools. It's 8 pools of 4.
8 pools of 4. There you go. Yep. And then you'll end up with the top 2, and I think that's the perfect format. But again, that'd be too many teams that don't deserve to be at a Rugby World Cup. But again, that's what we should be aiming for. Now, saying all of this, and how good this is for Rugby World Cups, they've launched this new Rugby Nations or whatever it is tournament, which kind of works against what they've done for the Rugby World Cup.
Yeah.
With so the 6 Nations teams and the 4 Rugby Championships, and then it's looking to be Fiji and Japan from the Rugby Championships to be competing. No talk of promotion, relegation, or changes or anything like that.
For 2 years, it's locked. So for 2 years, it's going to be locked with those teams. And Tonga and Samoa have already come out and said, this is not great. You know, this is pretty shit. And I agree with them. You know, I think that there should be promotion, relegation right from day one, and a chance for those nations to be involved. So I think they're rightfully pissed off.
I agree, and I saw Lehman Sopawanga came out with a statement, and I couldn't agree more with them. Like, again, if we're looking to grow the game, more games against those tier 2 nations just make more sense to me. And again, I haven't got a perfect format for it yet, but I'm sure we could sit down and come up with something better than what the rugby board have come up with. But it's also a money thing. Like, we've got to, the game's the game. You've got to understand that this is probably the best way for them to make money. Again, a game Samoa against England is probably not making as much money as a New Zealand England type thing like that. So, like, there's bits and pieces to that. But again, in the end, if we want to keep World Rugby alive and keep expanding, I think 32 teams is the goal. Then we need more tournaments with some of those lesser teams, tier 2 nations, should I say. All right, finish off today. World Rugby Awards was announced last night. Obviously the greatest player of all time. Crowning moment after defeat that he had to suffer. And as Wayne Barnes said, I think you're captain now, Ardie Savea. Like, it was just known. Like, it wasn't even he didn't have to say he was captain. When you know you're a good captain when you're getting told by the referee that you are the captain. So, Ardie Savea, best rugby player in the world.
Are you sure that wasn't just an admin thing?
No, this is how it is. He is the greatest rugby player ever, and deservedly wins the award. Look, I love the 4 nominations. I thought all 4. Ebenezer Beth had a great year. Bundyaki had probably the best Rugby World Cup. And then Antoine Dupont is obviously Antoine Dupont. But saying that, I think the right man won. I think Ardie Savea has been incredible this year. I look at Breakthrough Player of the Year was Mark Talia, which I think is also very deserved, again, and showed off in the Rugby World Cup final why he was the Breakthrough Player of the Year. 9 tackles broken. I will say, so that they also released the Dream 15 team, and only one South African made it. And there's a little bit of controversy around that, but I think that's credit to South Africa. Because that's what South Africa is. They're a team.
It's a championship team, not a team of champions. You know, that's what it is. It's the saying. It's the saying.
And there are a couple. I think Stephen Kitsoff has had a fantastic year, probably deserves in there. But when you look at players like Sia Kolisi, who was out injured for most of it, Peter Steph only like that game against the All Blacks reminded me of how good he was back when he won Player of the Year. I think it was 2019, and I was like, that was the Peter Steph that we all know. Like that is who he is as a player. I don't think he's had a year like that, but he had a World Cup performance like that. You look at Andre Pollard out injured, Ches and Kobe maybe, but again, the wingers they selected, I thought Pinot and both Jordan have been fantastic. So I sat there and I was like, I actually agree with most of the team. There's not a lot of disagreement to it. Yes, you could make arguments for more South Africans in there, but I could counter argue that. So yeah, I think Stephen Kitsoff is the only one that stood out to me. I was like, he's had just a year to remember as a big ginger front rower. So yeah, that was the only one that really stood out to me. Other than that, I was like, solid team with, I guess, a solid group of players. There were obviously other awards. There were the Sevens awards were handed out. I know an Argentinian won that for the men's. Were there any other awards?
Kiwi won it for the women's.
She did. Wong, I think it was.
Yes, it was, because she's also a NRLW Dragons player.
She is.
There you go.
Was there any other big awards? Am I missing something? I know John Smith won an award for Spirit of Rugby. Memory. It's not good, team.
The coach of the year was Andy Farrell, I think, right?
Yeah, which I tend to... It's hard. I think he probably deserves it. They've been the best coach team of the year. I'd give them that. But to go past the two finalists is pretty tough, I think. Yeah, but hey, it is what it is. I guess that's one where you could sit there and make an argument.
Well, I think Ireland's lost. They only lost one game all year, which was unfortunately the quarterfinal. I think they lost other than that.
No, they wouldn't have. So yeah. But again,
I mean, it's up there for debate. Yeah, for sure. I don't imagine it was an easy decision.
No, I tend to agree. Yeah, that's probably the hardest one to debate. Excellent. That is pretty much the international calendar, I think, for this year done.
It was a Barbarians versus Wales game.
Yep, that sounds fun.
Michael Hooper's playing, so that's...
Isn't Eddie Jones assistant coaching as well?
Yeah.
Is that not going to be the most awkward thing in the world?
I think Michael Hooper's already responded to it and was just very classy about it, as Michael Hooper would be. So I don't think Michael Hooper will do anything about it. I think he'll be what Michael Hooper always is, which is an angel in human form, and he'll just let his actions speak louder than his words, and Eddie Jones will sit in the corner and feel bad.
I was about to say I'm sure I agree with Eddie. Like, I reckon Hooper's going to go in there with a terrible attitude, just stink up the whole gaff, and
that's definitely Michael Hooper's reputation as the type of player he is. Petty,
exactly.
Petty.
I wouldn't say it any other way. The more and more we talk about it, the more and more ridiculous. I can't believe this Eddie Jones spell has been. But
yeah. Well, a dark year for Australian rugby.
Yeah, and it doesn't get much lighter over here, to be honest.
Yeah.
Rugby World Cup final loss. But Ardie Savea is the best player in the world, so hey, I'm going to hang my cap on that. Super Rugby around the corner, at least. We've got that to look forward to. Early season prediction, like 6 months before. Where do your Waratahs finish, bud?
Fifth.
One place up from this year. Yeah. I think they could do it if Angus Bell stays healthier for longer. If we stay healthier for longer, we've got a squad. But it's just depth that worries me. As with all Australian teams, it's depth.
Well, I love the signing you made, Fergus Lee Warner. Back from the UK, and he was fantastic at the Western Force. I was in awe of him.
There was a big English prop we signed as well, who looks like the most English bloke I've ever seen who plays for Saracens,
Yeah. So hopefully, you'll see some more signings coming in. I think some of those under 20 players will step up, and
Let's get a couple more Jorgensens in the squad.
Couple more Jorgensens. But again, if he's healthy and a year under his belt, Joseph Soaliti in the team as well.
I don't think he's coming this year. I think he's coming next year. I don't think he's coming 2024. I think he's coming 2025. Don't think Roosters are going to let him out of his contract.
Well, I tried for you. Hurricanes without Ardie, I'm nervous. I'm very nervous. So we'll see. We'll see. Exciting times ahead. But thank you for joining us over the course of the Rugby World Cup. We will be back again next week to discuss some other topics, probably break down the World Cup into a bit more categories and discuss some of the key moments throughout that. But for now, I have been Luke. That has been Husey. You've been listening to That Rugby Podcast. Goodbye.
Peace.